truly believe in the magic.
Hey Magic fans, and welcome to Penny for Your Thoughts, the podcast of the Orlando Magic UK. I'm Paul, host for this episode, where we'll be talking about, yes, the Magic's first home court win of the season. We're also joined by the Magic's radio host and producer, Jake Chapman. Jake, thanks for joining us and welcome to the pod.
Glad to be here, guys. Thanks for having me.
It's a real pleasure having you on, mate. Real pleasure. We've been looking forward to it. We've had a couple of missed starts over the last couple of weeks, haven't we? Between you're having to host an event with Cole and MCW, and ours, all three of us falling ill at this end. How was the MCW and Cole event?
Yeah, it's a crazy time of year, so I'm glad we could make time to link up. It was awesome. It was one of those things that it was kind of a last second thing. They had an opening, and it was run by his agency. It was at Top Golf, their agency, Cole and Michael Carter Williams, and it was just a very small, sort of intimate Q&A. And if you got to do a Q&A in front of a bunch of strangers, you could do a lot worse than Cole Anthony and Michael Carter Williams. So they made it easy on me. We had fun. It was a good night.
Cole is such a star when it comes to anything media-wise. That post-game interview with Dante was something special again.
We need more.
Absolutely. So as always, I'm joined by Mikey. You well, buddy?
Yes, mate. Thank you. Yeah, on the mend now. All good.
Good man. Health on the improvement. That's good. And if you watch it on YouTube, you'll notice that Geraint is missing. Our Vucevic of the Valleys is on court hooping tonight. So we are joined, making his return from last week, Gary Craggs. Gary, how you doing, mate?
Absolutely tip-top, especially after the Utah game, Paul.
Mate, it was quality, wasn't it? We're so happy to finally get that result. I hope G's happy with Vucevic of the Valleys. I was going to go with his love of the Lakers with Cardiff's Kyle Kuzma or Cardiff's Caruso. But I thought I'd be nice.
How about Cardiff Abdul-Jabbar?
Mate, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. He'd have liked that as well. He'd have liked anything to do with it. He'd have loved the Lakers side of things. But so before we get into it this week, I'm going to get the Jalen Suggs jersey plug out of the way. We're running a competition. Our friends at the official NBA store Europe and Fanatics UK are giving away an Orlando Magic Jalen Suggs jersey. So one lucky winner. All you need to do, subscribe to our YouTube channel and leave us a comment on the episode looking at the 2021-22 schedule, telling us which Magic player you're most looking forward to seeing this season. The link will be in the description of this podcast. Save your searching, so just click in there. We're hoping that we're going to announce the winner very, very shortly. We're aiming for 350 followers. We're over 330 now, so get in there. If you haven't already done it, get in there. And as we've said many times, if you've got multiple emails, bang in another entry, bang in another YouTube account. We don't care who follows us. We just want the followers. So get in there and get on. So let's crack on. Let's get the Magic news out of the way. But before I do that, I want to ask a question and talk about the heavyweight bout that we saw last night in Denver. Jokic versus Morris. So opinions are varying greatly on this one. Whether Jokic was right to give him one as Morris deserved it, for going in with the elbow, to where some are saying Jokic was cowardly as Morris had his back turned and was walking away. So where you at, boys? Gary, go on. I'll give to you first. I'll throw you under the bus.
Cheers, mate. Thanks for that. I don't think you can say either of them were right. And I've still got burned in the back of my mind when Jokic wound up and swung at Terence Ross. I'll never forget that because it was Terence Ross and I take anything personally that happens to him. But by the same token, I think Morris has had this reputation around the league, and I could be wrong here, but I'm sure he got into something with Cousins when he was on the Rockets and shoved him from behind. Yep. Maybe not at the same speed. So I think it's a case of two wrongs don't make a right, but if you keep pushing people, eventually somebody's going to push back. That's my take.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I'm with you. Jake, as a diplomat, as far as the NBA side of things goes, what were your thoughts on it?
I don't know how diplomatic this is, but if anybody deserves it, it's the Morris brothers.
100%.
They're always in the middle of it. I covered Marcus in Detroit, and we had a good relationship. He's a good enough guy, but on the floor, those guys they're goons, man. That's what they do. Jokic was absolutely wrong the way he responded, obviously, but none of that happens without the cheap shot forearm shiver in the first place at midcourt, which was a hard, fairly dirty foul. Again, you can't respond the way that Jokic did. And Jokic is sort of developing a little bit of a reputation himself. And it looks terrible because he's the reigning MVP. And Adam Silver, the league office, does not want that image out there. So he'll probably get a nice suspension or something like that. And we'll all move on. The aftermath was crazy, too. There's pictures now of, Jimmy went nuts, but there's pictures now of the Heat guys waiting in the locker room and waiting in the hallway for the Nuggets. So, I can't wait to see what happens next time those two square off.
Yeah, I thought it was very funny that Jimmy Butler, it was a case of hold me back. I'll get going once 20 people are in front of me. He didn't want it when he was only 3 feet away. No. But Mikey, what's your take?
Yeah, and on top of that, the beef on Twitter started as well with his brother and Jokic's brothers as well, saying don't take it any further because we'll be waiting for you. So like you guys have said. I retweeted a video of Richard Jefferson about an hour or so ago, and he said...
I was going to refer to that, mate.
Yeah, he said, when it comes to Morris, he's like, you don't do that. And then when it comes to Jokic, like, you definitely don't do that. Yeah. But one doesn't lead to the other without Morris leaving the elbow and getting him under the ribs. So Morris got exactly what he deserved. It's not the first time the twins have been involved. In fact, if you go on YouTube, there's videos, streams of them with countless altercations they've had with various players over the years. So it's not a surprise he was in the middle of it, but yeah, it's not a good look that Jokic is retaliating like the way he did.
Suggestion of a little bit of a knee int from Morris into Jokic's knee as well.
I think it was more the rib shot. I think it was the worst part of it.
Right. It was, yeah.
But let's be honest, I enjoy seeing it now and then.
Hey, well, I'm going to say this, and this is probably quite controversial considering the job I used to do. But, it's 30 years as a cop. I used to sit in the van in town centres on a Friday and Saturday night. And you'd see these little snide, aggressive behaviours that then that person would get flattened and they'd be the one coming across the police van saying, I want him arrested, I want him doing. You started it, mate. You started it, you couldn't finish it, bad luck, move on. And that's exactly where I felt this was. Yeah. You started something, you couldn't finish it, bad luck, move on. Hey, so enough of that. Let's get to the Magic. Utah, a thrilling Orlando Magic win over the Jazz. The Orlando Magic offense really fired for the first home court win of the season by 100 to 107. Moved the Magic to a 3-8 record, and we sit 14th in the East, above Detroit. So, as always, we'll give balance and say that Utah were playing the second night of a back-to-back, having played a very hard game in Miami. They were without Mike Conley, rested due to injury prevention, I think the phrasing was. But does that actually detract from anything that the Magic did, their performance in that game? I don't personally think so. Cole Anthony hit 33, season high, tying his season high. And he heard it from the Amway, didn't he? He heard it from the Amway Center crowd cheering, giving it some MVP, which I absolutely loved. And, holding Utah to 15 points twice in first and the fourth quarter, I think it was, is the least points that the Magic have conceded in any quarter. So absolute quality. So we're not going to get overexcited by one win. But let's be fair, we are. So, Jake, what are your thoughts on Cole's performance, his growth in this second season?
What can you say? I'm getting greedy. Like, now I'm getting used to it. I think we should start to expect this from him. There are a couple things that have far exceeded my expectations. For the amount of usage he has right now and the amount the ball is in his hands, I expected the turnover numbers to go up and they have not. They're right about 2.5 a game, and I think that's very acceptable. And the percentages, I didn't expect him to be this efficient. Like, I knew he was going to grow into a bigger role offensively, but a lot of times when you're used a lot more and when you're playing more minutes and when you're starting and when you have that level of responsibility, especially as a second-year guy, the turnovers go up and the efficiency numbers go down. And man, he's been smart with the basketball. He shares it when need be. He shoots it when need be. He feeds the hot hand. If there's a Franz or a T. Ross rolling, he's making sure that he's running the offense and getting them going. But then he's easily the best on the team at getting his own shot. And that's what he's doing right now. He's shooting the lights out. I don't have the figures in front of me. But off the bounce, off the dribble, he's one of the better players in the league. So, I mean, obviously we had a sense that he could be this kind of a scorer, but the efficiency numbers are what are really blowing me away right now. And, you know, you're starting to hear talk about most improved player and stuff like that. And usually it doesn't happen necessarily for second-year guys. But if they win games, he will absolutely be in that conversation. Just like they win games, he'll be in the all-star conversation, for crying out loud, with the way he's played so far. So with the wins come the spoils and the awards. And so let's get the wins first. Yeah.
How much fun is he to be there and watch night in, night out?
He's a blast. I mean, he's obviously got this great energy. And so you're, you know, doing what Dante and I do, for instance, you want guys like that to succeed and be good because it's good for everybody, right? The content is good, right? But like, so there's that whole element of, we know it's going to be fun if we get him on the postgame show or on the podcast or whatever. But then like right now he is sort of the heartbeat of that team. And, you know, we're going to talk, I'm sure, about the rest of the young guys and the rest of the young core, but it all sort of starts with Cole right now. So it's been a blast.
Yeah. Yes. And Mikey, Wendell Carter Jr., another double-double secured with 22 points, 15 rebounds, 6 assists. He made 4 3-pointers. That's his 17th of the season.
Yep.
It's more than his combined total for the Bulls and Magic last season. Are you getting Vooch vibes?
I wouldn't say Vooch vibes because they're different players, really, aren't they? And they're always going to draw that comparison when they were traded for one another. But Mr. Consistency is certainly a nickname we can start giving him. I mean, you have to look at the numbers. I mean, he's shooting the career best 39% from 3, which is a massive improvement, and it's going to really open up the floor for the Magic on the offensive end. Rebounding the ball, assists, even blocks are right up there with his career numbers. So, yeah, the Magic are better when he's on the floor, 100%. And we've seen that with the starting unit. So when he comes off, I mean, I want to change the subject slightly about Mo Bamba as well, because that was an important factor that Mosley brought up in the press conference after the Utah game, where he wanted to put Bamba back in. He said, no, these guys are rolling. Let them keep playing. I'll wait if I need to. So that just sort of shows you the sort of camaraderie and the togetherness this group have got this season. But yeah, Wendell, he's just been solid. And I actually like him in the power forward position more than playing him at the 5, which we did when he moved to us last season. So yeah, let's see more of it, because if he's playing like this, we're going to have a better chance to win every night.
Yeah. And Gary, I'm going to ask you about Gary Harris and RJ, because we spoke about them last week on the pod. You know, we got a little bit concerned that RJ seemed a bit headless rabbit. You know, headless chicken. I'll mix in my metaphors there. Headless rabbit, mate. Not as good as a headless chicken. But
I just assumed it was different over the pond. I just assumed you guys.
No, Jake,
it's not. It's
Jake,
just Paul. I have a reputation of being unable to speak properly. Normally it's with names. Today it's metaphors I'm mixing up.
It's good thing you have a podcast then, Paul.
And if you're lucky, it might rub off on Jake by the end of the hour.
Yeah, it is contagious. I'm sorry, man. It's going to be a bad one for you.
Sounds good.
And going back to the point, so and then Gary Harris, we were talking about the veterans that things haven't seemed to quite be there yet with them and the position that they were in. So, particularly in that fourth quarter, both showed, especially in that scramble play towards the end. How are you feeling now after seeing that performance? How are the concerns?
I think it's one of those what I would call beyond the box score performances. So I think if you just looked at the box score of both those players, you would see two players who scored 8 points and you would say, oh, it's a decent bench return. But I think particularly in the fourth, if we start with RJ, I thought he was very controlled. He's been speaking about this, wanting to have a defensive focus. And I think when the ball was coming up the floor in the fourth quarter, you could see that he almost had that Boston vibe, what we talked about on the last pod, where it was hard to get past him. The arms were out. You could see his true size of what he is now. And I think that was playing a factor. And then when the ball came to him in the fourth, he was hitting big shots when it mattered. And you can't buy that. And especially that 3, which I think just killed the game. So I think with RJ, it's going to be a case of giving the minutes, which Cole kind of said at the end of the touchline interview, and then also let him find his role within this. With Gary Harris, I know I was a little bit critical on the pod, and I don't like digging players out or anything like that, but I felt that with Harris, he set the tone when it was Ingles who he beat down the court to get the ball ahead of. And I think if you look at it and you see the vets doing that, it's going to set a tone back through the rest of the squad. And I felt in the fourth quarter, he was calm, he was smooth. I felt that was rubbing off to see the game out almost. And I know when he came from Denver, he came with this reputation of Denver fans felt he should have made an all-defensive team at one point, and he hadn't. And I think we saw that in the fourth quarter where there was him and RG on the court. It became very difficult for Utah to just score at will. So I think both of them played huge. And, we're early in the season and it gives hope that what can come off the bench. Maybe a corner's being turned. Maybe RJ's found himself. Maybe Gary Harris also maybe there's been an injury there that we didn't know about, but very encouraged by what I saw in the Utah game, and long may it continue.
Yeah, absolutely, Paul. Yeah. I think you mentioned the selfless play, Mikey. One thing I think that kind of went a little bit under the radar was Gary Harris at the point where Cole had got his technical and then he got called for a really tip-tap foul on the defensive end, and he wasn't happy. He was quite close. I think he was probably quite close to getting a second technical and tossed from the game, which would have changed things totally for us. Yeah. Gary Harris was the one who went across and moved him away. I think Jamal Mosley called a timeout, but it was Gary Harris who moved him away. And those little things are really important. And following that, the coach was stood talking with Cole. He had him to one side, really expressing, calm it down. You do it. You're right. You've been wronged by the calls, but hurt him in another way. And I think that's what he did. The selflessness that we've got and this hustle play. How much are you seeing of that in the association that you have with the Magic, Jake, when you're just around them?
Yeah, I mean, everybody knows about the bell plays, right? But I think there's, like, for instance, I'll go back to the event that I hosted with MCW and Cole, and it was actually MCW, and he said, this locker room, more so than any other team that I've been on in my entire career, we're rooting for each other. There's no competition for minutes, we all genuinely like each other, and we're all happy when somebody else contributes or performs well or succeeds. And I realized that's, it kind of sounds like lip service, but this was like a really small event. He didn't need to offer that up. And he did say like this is the best locker room vibe and chemistry that I've had throughout my entire career. And as we know, he's played for, I think, 24 of the 30 NBA teams. No, I'm kidding. It's like 9 or 10, but he's been around. We know Mike's been around. So I think you can see it. I think there's certain quotes that jump out at me from training camp and from media day. Mo Bamba talking about how they're all fans of each other's games. Some of these guys, Mo and Cole have known each other for years and they're buddies. So I think there's a lot of really positive energy there. Now, look, you lose 9-10 straight games or something like that. It's going to be really difficult to be positive. Everybody's positive at the beginning of the year. And there isn't the burden of expectations right now. I mean, these are young guys, and it's just kind of like roll the ball out there. And all Coach Mosley needs to see is a couple bell plays. He wants it all to start with energy and hustle and effort. And then you sort of fill in from there. Then as you grow, you start to be a little bit more exacting. And then you point it out in the film and you say, no, you can't do that. Don't do that. So right now, I think it's easy to be a little bit more positive and have those vibes. But I do think I think you got a lot of guys, and this is by design, with really high basketball IQs, a lot of guys who genuinely love to play the game, who are gym rats. And so I think when you start with that as kind of the basis for your culture, you're already on the right track. And so now it's just a matter of figuring out who works well together and getting that mix right. I do think there's something to Gary and Terrence, maybe being off to a bit of a slow start, Terrence specifically, because it's not about him this year. This is the first year that it's about development more so than what Terrence is about, which isn't necessarily development at this point. It's Terrence is about winning a championship. Terrence could be a six man or maybe a starter on a really good team. We know that. And that's why the trade talks are going to happen. It's almost unavoidable. And so I think there is an adjustment, that Terrence needed to make, Gary needs to make as he's working his way back, to sort of understand and be comfortable with the spotlight not being on them. And from everything I've seen, both those guys have done a really good job of it, but you can have to work those kinks out on the floor. Terrence Ross is used to playing with, Vooch and Aaron and Evan and Kem Burt setting him screens. And every time he gets in the game, every set is run for him. And that's not the case anymore. So there is an adjustment period with the veterans. And I think you have to give credit to those two. Throw Robin Lopez in there, MCW as well. From the side, each one more. I think they've done a good job of sort of being those veteran voices, but allowing and recognizing the fact that this is the kids' show. I mean, the starting five is the starting five for a reason, and that's what it's about. And then RJ coming off the bench and that young core, Markel and JI when they come back. That's the future of the organization. So that can be kind of tricky for the vets, but I think they're doing a good job with it.
That's a really interesting point. So you've just alluded there to some of the injuries. Etwan Moore, he's remained out with a sprained left knee. Michael Carter-Williams still out, recovering after having bone fragment removed and to repair his left ankle ligament. JI, Markel Fultz, both continue to be out as they're rehabilitating from the left knee ACL injuries. Are we anywhere close to seeing perhaps some return? There's not a lot coming out from the team. Not to put you in a position if you can't say. No,
I'm not sure. I don't know, Paul. I wish I could. I think Markel is getting close. Like every time we see video or whatever of him at practice, he looks like he's about there. So I think it's they're obviously going to be cautious, and they've always put precaution first, especially with their young players coming back off injuries, especially a guy like JI and a guy like Markel, who do have injury histories. But so I think Kel's close. And then I'm not sure about Mike. I'm really anxious to see MCW get back out there. I think he would be huge, smoothing over some of those issues as far as the second unit goes. He's like my favorite player. Like I love the way Michael Carter-Williams plays the game. And I think the fact that he is still a pro at this point in his career just speaks to the grit that guy's had like 5 different careers, within his career, basically. So I think getting him back out there, you want to talk about bell plays. The guy's a walking bell play. So I can't wait to see him back out there. And he said he was feeling better and he's getting close. So hopefully we can get him back out there in the next few weeks.
That's awesome. Because again, you're talking to the converted here. We are all MCW fans. We love the energy that he brings. Whether a lot of stuff, as Gary alluded to earlier on, with some of the plays that we had from both RJ and Gary Harris, a lot of what MCW does doesn't necessarily show up on the box score, but he is so valuable to the team. And he came into the Magic, tried to save his career, and grabbed the opportunity with both hands. And without him, I don't think we'd have been into the playoffs the way we were. I think he's a fantastic guy for us.
No, I agree. Every 30 NBA teams want a Michael Carter-Williams in their locker room.
Yeah. So that's going to cover the news. Jake, we're going to get into it with you, mate. We always like to find out a little bit about I guess, find out a little bit more. So this is your 9th season with the Magic, 8 as a radio producer, and your 13th covering the NBA in total. You've also been with Detroit and the Cavs. Cavs doing the 2018 finals run?
Yep, correct.
And so besides producing the pre- and post-game radio show, you're also the host and for Magic Radio Network. You're responsible for expanding the Magic's podcast offerings. And if that's not enough, you're also the producer and co-host for Magic Drive Time with Dante on the Magic's daily radio show. Wow. How many jobs do you want?
I probably need more, to be honest with you, in this business. No, it's been, I'm old enough to remember when you could just be a radio broadcaster and that was a career. And it was when I started, and it's not anymore. I mean, you got to be, now you're content creators, right? And you have to figure out a way to do everything. Especially with radio, because radio, terrestrial radio, obviously transformed drastically over the last 20 years or so. And it's nowhere near as powerful as it once was, but audio is still very, very strong. Hence what we're doing here. And so, what my career ended up doing was sort of morphing as the tech did. And I still love sports radio. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. I'm a sports radio guy. I love post-game shows. And when I moved to Detroit, it was to do that. It was to host the pre and post-game shows and produce the Pistons radio network broadcasts. And we got phone calls after the game. Like, even though the team was terrible and Andre Drummond and everybody hated him, I got 5, 6, 7, 8 phone calls after the game because that's Detroit and Cleveland. It's like Cleveland where I grew up, and Orlando's just a little bit different. It's not a sports radio type market like that, so it's a little bit different, but based on what I hear, people don't call many sports radio shows anymore. Anyways, it's kind of a thing of the past. So what you have to do is you have to be creative. You have to figure out ways to create compelling content, and you want it to sort of tie into what it is we do. Dante and I are both sports radio guys. We want to have a classic sounding sports radio product, but you gotta incorporate Twitter, and you gotta do the text platform, and you gotta figure out different ways. We're doing Zoom interviews now rather than it used to be. Like, I had an intern go with a wireless microphone down into the locker room and hold it up to, Dwight Howard's face. Well, we don't do that anymore. Now we have safety protocols, and we're Zooming, and there's a room, and the tech has changed drastically. But no, I don't know. I know how blessed I am. I get to talk about sports every day, and I get paid for it. So I guess I'm winning.
That must suck, mate. Really. But mate, I've got to ask you before we go onto the Magic stuff. I've just got to ask you, how exciting was it to cover the 2018 finals with the Cavs?
It was cool. So that was right after I left the Pistons, and I got a job with 92.3 The Fan in Cleveland. And my main job was producing the midday show, 10 to 2 every day. So I was on air a bit there, and then I would have my own Sunday show, and then I did Browns radio broadcasts as well. But I got there in February. It was the day after the Super Bowl was my first day at the radio station. And it must have been that week, I think, or maybe the next week, when the Cavs traded the entire friggin' team away, right? Remember, they had Isaiah Thomas and Jay Crowder after the Kyrie deal, and it didn't work at all. Kevin Love hated Isaiah, and all this stuff's happening. So they blew the team up. They brought in Rodney Hood and Jordan Clarkson and all these guys. And the Eastern Conference was so damn bad back then that LeBron dragged that team to the finals. Everybody knew they were going to get smoked by the Warriors. But it was really cool just being in the building. And look, I wasn't doing much. I was there. I was getting audio, post game in the locker room, sending some tweets out, asking a few questions. So it's not like I was, producing or hosting the pre or post game or whatever. But it was a lot of fun. It was a great atmosphere, and you can't beat it.
So, Jake, this is your second stint working for the Magic, I believe, after listening to your episode with Stan Van Gundy last week, which was really cool. If you guys haven't checked that out. So going back to when you first started, how did you get the job working for the Magic, and how did you get working into radio? So how did you get started?
Sure, Mikey. So I went to Ohio State and I studied journalism. Excuse me. And back then, like, this speaks to the radio stuff. I thought I was going to write for newspapers. There were a thing called newspapers back then when I was in college. So I got a journalism degree, but I interned at a sports talk station in Columbus, and I did a couple internships. And then the Magic have this really robust internship program, more so than most pro sports franchises in North America. And every year they hired, and you had to be within like 18 months graduated from college, or going to graduate within 18 months. Every year they would hire 15 to 20 interns from all over the country for the season, a seasonal internship. It was paid, quote unquote. It wasn't very well paid. But it honestly changed my life. Dante Marcatelli had just become radio manager. This is in 2006. He hired a producer, and they hired me as the intern. The producer that Dante hired left 2 years later. I spent the 2 years in the interim bartending, working at radio stations, doing overnights, doing traffic reports, just anything to stay in Florida where I had professional connections, which, by the way, I had never even been to the state of Florida before I moved down here to take the internship. And I was copywriting for some group of stations on the coast, and it was fine, but like Dante called me one day and he said, Justin, who was the producer, left. Do you want to interview for the job? And I was like, do I? So the rest is kind of history. I spent 5 seasons after that as producer. And then I went to Detroit, and then I went to Cleveland, and the Detroit thing was crazy. Like, it was this great opportunity. I mean, Dante and Scott Inez and Dennis Newman and everybody I worked with at that point were like, you'd be crazy not to go. It's closer to home, and you're on air. Like, I wasn't doing pre and post game hosting, obviously, at that point. But it was with a radio cluster. It was with a company called Greater Media, who had rock stations and whatever. And they were launching a new sports talk station to go against 97 won the ticket in Detroit, the big sports talk king. And they got the rights to the Pistons contract. And so they hired me, basically to be the Pistons guy. And it was awesome. It was a great opportunity. I was doing football stuff. They had me covering the Lions in my free time, doing some Tigers stuff. Red Wings, I did pregame for hockey at one point, which was really difficult because I do not know hockey very well. But what happened was the company got sold. And that was like, I remember it was like, I know how difficult radio is right now and how precarious it is. And everybody told me, well, do they have a lot of debt? And I was like, no, actually they have zero debt. That's one thing that I know very well about this company. It's privately owned and they have no debt. And they're like, well, that's good. That's obviously a positive sign. It sounds like there's some security. What I didn't think through is that when you have no debt, it's very easy to be sold. And that's what ended up happening. The radio company got bought out, and they flipped our format. They changed us from a sports talk station to a throwback hip hop and R&B station. And lo and behold, the Pistons were not interested in their games airing on a throwback hip hop and R&B station. So it all sort of fell apart. Like, my contract expired. The Pistons kept me around. They were great. They kept me freelancing my podcast that I was doing for them, paying me very well to do it, but it wasn't full time. It was seasonal. So I ended up going to Cleveland, and the timing was crazy because I was only in Cleveland for about a year, and it was like the greatest thing that I could ever imagine. Like, I was in my hometown doing Browns, Cavs stuff. I was hosting my own show on Sundays. I loved it. But to be frank, the money was crap. And so Dante called and he was like, hey, I'd love to bring it back. Here it'll be a bit different than it was before. You're obviously going to be on air more and more opportunities. So I jumped at it, and it was probably the best decision I ever made. That was 2 years ago now. So this is my third season. I've been here for 2 calendar years, and I'm on my third season already. We've played a lot of basketball in the last 18 months or so with the pandemic and everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
In that time, mate, you've had some very impressive guests. Particularly recently, Steve Francis, T-Mac, Mike, you mentioned Stan Van Gundy. We've already spoke about the Cole and MCW thing. So is there anybody that, fancy guest and any favourite moments from the interviews?
It's funny that you say that because before I left for Detroit, Paul, we were doing Magic Drive Time and we were pouring all of our resources into guests for Drive Time specifically. Because we weren't doing the podcast. So anybody we could get, we were gonna get for Drive Time. And there was one day, and it was right when I first started hosting on my own, and I was really nervous doing it because I just didn't have that much experience. And we landed Penny Hardaway, and Penny is my all-time favorite basketball player. And I booked him thinking Dante was going to interview him, and then something came up, and so now all of a sudden I'm interviewing Penny, and I'm not anywhere near as comfortable as I am now. I mean, this is not 10 years ago. It's probably 10 years ago. And I couldn't tell you anything that was said in that interview. I was completely blacked out. But I just remember getting done with it and going like, you just interviewed Penny Hardaway. Like, whose life are you living right now? So that one definitely stands out to me. And then I don't know, we rebranded my podcast. It was Magic Weekly, and now we're calling it Mostly Magic with Jake Chapman, specifically because they want me to be kind of my weird self a little more at times. They don't want it to be so newsy. And when I say they, I mean, basically anybody whose opinion I care about within the organization. And so for me, like Stan was the perfect first guest for that because you guys mentioned you watch it. I told Stan, like, I think I've heard more Stan Van Gundy than anybody probably in the history of the world. Like every time except for maybe his family, every time he addressed the media for like a decade, I heard that audio or I either edited it or I was there or I played it during the pregame show or postgame or whatever. And so I just find that guy so fascinating. I really respect him. And I mean, I could have talked to him for 3 hours. So that's one of my more recent highlights. And then the T-Mac one was actually at halftime on the radio broadcast of opening night, the home opener, I should say. And I got done with that one. And I just saw it like, that was so like, I just talked ball with him for 5 minutes. I mean, it was, there's not a ton of prep you can do. Like, what am I going to do? Like, hey, Tracy, tell me how you felt when, the night you scored 61 points or whatever. Like he's done those interviews before. Yeah. So I just wanted to know like how he felt about the state of the league, what players he likes watching, and how much of a fan he is and how important it is for him to be a part of the 75th anniversary, not necessarily the list, which I tried to kind of steer clear of. And so that was a lot of fun. Like Tracy's the easiest dude to interview. I mean, he's so warm and personable, but we just sat there and basically BS and talked ball for 5 to 8 minutes. So that was a lot of fun as well.
He's very generous with his time when you do get to talk to him. He puts you at ease. As I was fortunate enough to meet him at the where he was inducted into the Orlando Magic Hall of Fame. And got took across to meet him. And it's like, whoa, okay, meeting this guy. And he straight away puts you at ease. Yeah. Really good guy to talk to.
And you know what's funny, Paul? The first time that I ever interviewed him was going back, the days of the Penny interview. He was with the Knicks. He was coming off the back injury. And he wasn't quite healthy yet, but he gets there for shoot around. And, the Dantes of the world, everybody who's been around, they'll love the guy. I mean, he's like the Pied Piper when he comes back here, especially with media members, like because of what you just said, Paul. And so, but I had missed that, I wasn't here during that. So I go up to him and I was like, he were on a little media scrum. And I was like, Tracy, as you come back off injury, there's people have been talking or whatever. I forget exactly how I phrased it. But would you accept a role coming off the bench? Because that was sort of the talk. Like Tracy would should. He goes, coming off the bench. I haven't fallen off that effing much. Except he didn't say effing. and I was like, oh my God, Tracy McGrady hates me. Tracy McGrady to curse at me for crying out loud. And so I sort of had that in the back of my head when, 2 weeks ago when he came up for the interview. And obviously what he said to me at that time was just him, Tracy being Tracy and him being a competitor. But I was like, I knew he didn't remember that, but I was like, is Tracy as nice as everybody thinks he is? And yes, he is. He absolutely is.
You didn't bring it up then?
I didn't bring it up. No. Wisely.
If you're looking at the current team, Jake, Mo Bamba's a player who's shown progress this season. And what's your take on Mo? Like, what are you liking, and what do you think about his contract position going into the summer? Will he get paid, in your opinion?
Yeah, he'll get paid something, I'm sure. The number is going to be really interesting, Gary. Like, I don't know if anybody has a clear cut synopsis or idea of exactly what Mo Bamba is and who he is as a player, just because, his growth was so stunted by injuries the first 3 years. Obviously, it was a different situation where Steve Clifford and that team didn't have a ton of time to wait for him, right? If he had 3 or 4 defensive lapses in a 6-minute period of time, he got the hook. And so I think, one of the things that I love about Mo is and I always kind of feel weird talking about players' intelligence. But Mo Bamba is supremely intelligent. Like, you talk to him for 5 minutes and you're like, holy cow, like this dude is it's all clicking up there. And I think a lot of times, and I've seen this before, a lot of times the more intelligent players are the ones who struggle more with confidence because there's too much going on, especially young players. So I think what happened with Steve Clifford's staff and basically the situation that Mo was in on a veteran team was once he missed a shot, missed an assignment, did a dumb foul, got beat down the floor, whatever, made a mistake that he knew Cliff was going to be on his ass about. He got in his own head. Now he's looking over his shoulder. He's waiting for the hook to come. And again, that's not, to blame Cliff. It was just Mo was a young player on a veteran team. And there was just a disconnect there. So now I think now that he's in the starting lineup, I think he knows, now that he's healthy and has had a full offseason under his belt, I think he knows that if he makes a mistake, he's still going to be on the floor. Like, it's not going to be the end of the world. So I think he's just freer. I think he's just playing, reacting. He's not in his head as much, and you see the results for sure.
I think you can see him. Yeah, go on, Gary.
I'm just saying that's fascinating when you're getting to hear about what Mo's like, and then thinking about how he must be reflecting on himself on the floor. It's not really an angle I've heard too much on.
And that's just a guess. I don't know that for sure. But that's the way I see it, because I've seen intelligent players struggle more with confidence, more so than the guys who just kind of go out there and just play. And look, there's room for both. Obviously, it's sports. Like, you don't want a bunch of Einsteins running around, but
but what you've said, Jake, actually ties in with something that David Steele was telling me once, that his take on Mo very early on was once he stops overthinking the game and plays on instinct, his growth will be massive. And I think that's where we're looking at now.
I agree 100%. I also think there's things that Coach Mosley and the staff have done that have freed him up, right? Like, I don't know if any of us could have guessed. I like to think myself as forward thinking. I had no idea that it was going to take Wendell Carter Jr. to unlock Mo Bamba, like a twin tower, Spurs, Robinson Duncan type of thing going on here. But it did. They're really complementary players in the front court. I think having, Cliff wanted Mo to be a combination of Vooch and Kem Birch, and he's not, right? Like, and you weren't going to change things, and you weren't going to change the rotation. Obviously, when you have Vooch, like, it would have been really difficult to play Mo and Vooch together, because neither of them are the type player that Wendell Carter Jr. is. Whereas Wendell can set the screens, he's going to be your beef down on the block if somebody wants to take you down there and bang with you. But he can also still space the floor. Like, Wendell can do a lot of different things. He can chase fours around that I don't think you could get away with necessarily with the personnel that was here before. So I think there's a lot of different things at play for Mo right now, but the results are, you can't argue with them.
Yeah. Jake, take us back to draft night when you were in the Amway Center. So you were on with Dante, I think it was JT, on the radio broadcast. What was the atmosphere like when the Raptors selected Scotty Barnes at 4? And then what was it like at 5 when we obviously relieved when we took Suggs as well?
Yeah, for sure. We were, the crazy thing is we were preparing beforehand for anything, right? Like, okay, it's probably going to be Suggs or Barnes. What if it's neither, right? like Dante and I were like trying to go through like, what happens if they pass on Suggs? And I don't know how we would have responded, but I do know Amway Center would have emptied out instantly. There would have been a lot of angry fans there. Because the crazy thing is, it was basically the first time we had that many people that close together at Amway Center since the beginning of the pandemic. You know, we had the games, but everybody was spaced apart and everything. So it finally felt like there was a real atmosphere in the building. And then when you find out Barnes is going 4, the place it's just like this sort of rising, tide in there, and everybody's just jazzed up. And I am sitting there because I, as somebody who grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, and as somebody who is a producer, I like to think that my cynicism and pessimism helps me. I anticipate the worst case scenario before every broadcast. And so when it happens, I am prepared for it. So I was sitting there going, please don't pass on him. Please don't pass on him. Just because, not even because of my basketball brain and my scouting or whatever, just because I didn't want to have to deal with that on the broadcast. And I didn't want to have to, I didn't want to have to make it sound like everybody was okay with it in the building when I knew they would not have been okay with it in the building. So, but it was a really, really cool vibe. And it was, like I said, it was basically the first time we had a bunch of Magic fans standing next to each other at Amway Center, cheering for something in like 18 months. So it was great.
I know that Gary's going to get into the rotations and the squad with you in a moment, but I've just got to ask you about a couple of rotation guys that I know you've said that you're Team Mo Wagner. What is it you really like about his game?
The nasty. I like any player who gets under the skin of opposing players. I like any player who you would say, if he was on the other team, I would hate him. But he's not. He's on my team, so I love him. Like, I'm a big Joakim Noah fan and Artest and those guys, but not the Morrises. That's where I draw the line. Like the Morrises are jerks, but the other guys are my type guys. No, I just like I like that every time he steps on the floor, he's going to make it count. Like you don't miss Mo Wagner minutes, and sometimes that's not necessarily the best thing. But he's I think he's a good reserve to have. And that's the type of guy who makes players better in practice as well. I guarantee you Wendell and Mo dealing with Mo Wagner in practice on a daily basis. They probably get annoyed with him at times, but I guarantee he makes them better.
What about Robin Lopez? What do you think he's brought to the squad and on court?
Well, he's interesting because there are certain things that Robin Lopez does well and will probably be able to do well for another 40 years, right? Like he's got the ground bound hook shot and he's going to set a good screen and he's going to box you out. And at his age, I think it's good to have reserves in case of injury who are solid, who you don't have to worry about. With a team this young, you can't have 15, 23 and unders, right? Like you got to have a few veterans, both to try to fill that leadership role, which can be myriad things. It can be out on the road, what restaurant to go to or what restaurant not to go to. Or all of those things are important. And having guys like MCW and Etuan, I think is really important. And then having guys like Robin too. And then the other part with Robin is like, I think it was MCW who said it at that event I was talking about. He was like, yeah, we're all just, we're really young and it's just really young vibes. And then like the old, everybody's basically 30 or under. And then you got Robin, who's the old guy, but he's literally the biggest child out of any of us, which I think we all could see. So I think, I'm sure part of what Robin brings is comic relief, and that's always a good thing as well.
You need that.
Yeah.
So if we were looking at, obviously we've had all these injuries. So how do you see the rotation working if you were looking to the future, particularly when we get Markel and GI back?
I have no idea, Gary, right? Like it's fun to think about. It's the possibilities are endless, for crying out loud. I think right now you would have to suggest if Markel comes back and he's healthy and there's no minutes limit or any of that stuff. Couldn't you see Markel and Cole being a pretty good starting backcourt, and Jalen's struggling, and we know he's not going to continue struggling, and you want his defensive presence, certainly. So it's not like you're going to relegate him to the bench and he's, bye-bye Jalen. But I do think that what that might do is take a little bit of the pressure off Jalen, put the ball in his hands more if he's not on the floor with Cole as much, so that maybe he can start creating a little more. And I do wonder if having him on the floor against reserves or against second unit guys more often than he's been now, and obviously, everything gets mixed up anyways, might slow things down for him a little bit. Like, he needs to slow down. It's, everybody always says the game's moving too fast. He is moving too fast. Like, that guy is so fast. You can see it defensively. He's just wrecking sets and game plans. But then he offensively, he's just going a little too fast at times. And he's got to figure out a way. He's always been the best athlete on the floor. So he's got to figure out a way, I think, to use his IQ, to use angles. It's a tough league, man. You get into the paint, you have to create the contact and then bounce off. There's a whole lot of sort of gamesmanship that goes on with how you finish at the rim and how you get to the free throw line and how you do all of those things that Jalen, I think, is going to get, but it's just going to take time. So I do think if you bring Markel back and you put him in the starting lineup with Cole, I really like that. It's almost kind of like the same thing you got going on in the front court. You have two sort of complementary players who can do different things next to each other. I think Markel's got the sky's the limit defensively for him. So I love the idea of having that long body next to Cole in the backcourt. And then I think there would be a lot of positives right now to bringing Jalen off the bench. I realize it would be, maybe he would go through a bit of a confidence crisis, and it might be a storyline that, fifth pick in the draft coming off the bench, whatever, is he a bust, whatever. But I don't think you can worry about those things, especially when you're talking about a player as good as Markel. And then JI is going to be, look, we know if he's healthy, he's starting. So does that mean Mo comes off the bench? I'm not sure. I don't know how that shakes out. That one's going to be really tricky, I think, the front court, because the two bigs have been so good together right now. I think you can approximate. I don't know. I don't know who J.I. would play better next to, and that would be, I think, the first thing you would have to figure out. Do you want him on the floor with Mo, or do you want him on the floor with Wendell? To me, right now, the way Wendell's playing, like, it's hard to get him out of the starting lineup.
Absolutely.
What about with players like Chuma, Franz? Where would you see them fitting in?
I don't think Franz is going anywhere. I think Franz is just small forward. Yeah. And I wouldn't be shocked. The starting five has been so good. We've seen the numbers. And look, both Mo and Wendell have been really, really, really good together and separate. But unless you start winning some more games, like, I don't have a problem with them making changes to the starting lineup at all. And so I absolutely putting Chuma at the 4 would be an idea. I think I'm really going to struggle with bringing Wendell off the bench with the way he's played. I think, like, that's tricky. But look, Mo's been great too. And Mo does something that really nobody else does, which is protect the rim. So yeah, I don't know. Good problems to have, I guess, but it's going to be kind of tricky. I think right now, Chuma needs to work his way back more, I think, before you want him playing starters minutes. He doesn't seem necessarily right. He's getting there, but I would give it another week or so with him.
I think it also depends on matchups as well. Like, you think back to the preseason when we played the Pelicans and Mo got bullied by Valanciunas. That might be a game where you might want to play Wendell at the 5 and bring Mo off the bench, just as an example.
That's a great point. But I'll ask you guys, like, do you think you can do that? Can you change your starting lineup night to night? I I would hope that teams would be elastic enough to be able to deal with that. But one thing that I've always heard is that pro athletes like to know what to expect. They're creatures of habit. And, when they get to the arena each night, they want to know when they're going in the game, how long they're going to be in the game for. So that's going to be an interesting thing. Because Mikey, I'm like you, I think that's what I would want to do. I would want to be able to say, okay, tonight we're going to do this. And I've got 9 different guys and I'm going to deploy them in all these different ways based on matchups. But I'm not sure if athletes can deal with that. It's kind of an interesting dilemma.
Yeah.
I personally like the idea of sticking with the 5 that we've got who have played well. And people like, particularly JI, who's been out for a while, playing his way back in. I'm not sure he actually should come in and be the starter immediately. I think I wonder if there's an argument for him actually earning that position back. I don't know what everybody else thinks.
I'm kind of with you. Yeah. What do you guys think?
Gary?
I think it's a meritocracy. I think it's where you'll earn your way back. I think if I was trying to play a guest game, I think if everybody was 100%, you might find that one of JI or more is on the floor at all times. So I could see one of them starting and the other one always being on to give their pain protection.
Yeah.
So that's what I would guess at.
It's a great problem to have.
Oh, yeah.
It really goes well for the future.
But Paul, you bring up a good point. I don't think with the amount of time and the history of JI, I don't think it doesn't make sense to bring him back and immediately put him in the starting lineup. I think once he's ready to play starters minutes, I don't think it would be unfair necessarily to say, he was the starter. You don't lose your job due to injury. But that was a long time ago. He was a starter on a completely different team. Completely different group of players. So no, I kind of like that idea. Work your way back. This is a competition, and I don't know. It's really tricky with a guy like JI because of how much he has meant. But no, yeah, you got to earn it.
Yeah, that's where I am at the moment, and I don't know I perhaps defeat my own argument there because I don't know as I'm actually that way with Markel. I'll probably bring Markel straight back in. So I kind of take my own legs there. I don't know. But hey,
that's an easier argument to make, isn't it? When Jalen's struggling like he is, whereas the front court are playing well. So.
And the other part that's tricky, guys, is there's just not a ton of time to practice anymore, period. Like it's not even the pandemic year where you had all these restrictions. It's just the NBA schedule, season and schedule. There's just not a lot of time for them to work this stuff out on the practice floor. We're going to be watching it as they answer these questions in game. So it should be interesting.
I was amazed to hear that in the commentary that there is still literally no practice time. I was really surprised by that.
Part of it, Paul, is that there's so much information now over the last 10 years or so about injuries and the importance of rest. That, a lot of coaches and training staffs are scared to run them for too long. You gotta make time for the games and you got to make time for R&R afterwards. It's just not a whole bunch of time to get them on the practice floor. And if you do, you're probably going to be doing walkthroughs, non-contact stuff, ballroom, film stuff, whatever. It's gone are the days of the 3-hour, 2-a-day practices. That's for sure.
Well, with 2 gym rats in either corner here, I know that they will fully agree with the importance of resting the body.
Yeah, I've got to say, Paul, I've recently converted to the whole physio and sports massage, and the rest things won me over massively. So yeah, I'll back that up.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So that's been really interesting. I've thoroughly enjoyed that. Let's do the shameless plug, shall we? As we always do. As you know, guys, we are affiliated to NBA League Pass, Fanatics, and NBA Store Europe. So if you're looking to make any purchases, please join their website by clicking off our affiliate links on the social media pages and the website. It helps us pay for what we do. If you are shopping with either Fanatics or the NBA Store Europe, at the checkout, please add the discount code MAGICUK10 for 10% off your whole order. There are some exclusions apply. International shipping is offered also. Fanatics also host a whole range of football teams, soccer for our stateside friends, along with the NBA, NFL, NHL, and Major League Baseball. So please help us along. We do appreciate it. So let's get to the predictions and talk about the week ahead. So we had only one game between this podcast and the last one, where only Geraint was correct. He went for a Magic win. Mikey, Gary, and I were the pessimists and went for the Utah win.
I deserve a point for getting the leading scorer, though, don't I? So
no, that was only a tiebreaker, mate.
Oh, mate, that's outrageous! Outrageous.
That was a tiebreaker, and you got the answer wrong to start with, man. Sorry. You can have an honourable mention, but no more.
Cheers, Paul. Appreciate it.
So G joins me at the top of the league with 1 week correct. So we plan to record the next episode on Tuesday, the 16th of November. I think that's right. Before that, we've got 3 games. So the first one is Wednesday, the 10th, home court against Brooklyn. It's a midnight tip in the UK. So Thursday, midnight. The Brooklyn Nets are 7-4 on the season, sitting 7th in the East, 3-2 on the road, and their last outing was a loss in Chicago, 95-118. So no Kyrie, as we all know the issues there. I'm reading from Dan Savage that there's no Nick Claxton for about 2 weeks, and Joe Johnson also missed the Bulls game. However, they still boast some bloke called Kevin Durant, who apparently is the leader in field goals and points per game. I don't know. Never heard of him personally. Along with some guy called James Harden and a couple of other star players, apparently. So not the easiest of home matchups, but as G said last week, again, when we went into Utah game, beating opponents like that is such a magic thing to do. Again, losing the easier ones. Then we have Saturday the 13th, home court final game on the home stand. Midnight tip again in the UK on Sunday morning against the Washington Wizards. They are 7-3 at the moment, 4th in the East, having a fantastic start to the season and having won their last 2. On the road, not so good, 2-2 so far. They won the last outing, which was a home court game, 94-101 over the Milwaukee Bucks. Pretty deep with talent this year. Amazing. But they will be missing, according to Josh Robbins, who is now with the Washington Wizards, Rui Hashimura, Davis Bertans, and Thomas Bryant. They're all likely to be out for at least 2 weeks, apparently, though they are getting closer to coming back to team activities. And then we visit Atlanta on Monday the 15th, a 12:30 a.m. tip here in the UK so Tuesday morning. Atlanta only just above us, 4-7, 12th in the East, lost their last 4. For them, it will be the second night of a back-to-back, having played Milwaukee the night before. They have absolutely no injury concerns listed at the moment, and Trae Young leads the NBA in assists and field goal attempts. So, predictions. Jake, where do you see us going this week? What do you see for the week?
First off, have you guys looked at that 5 p.m. road trip? It's Atlanta, New York, Brooklyn, Milwaukee. I mean, come on. Like, what are they doing to us?
Schedule's not been kind, has it?
No. This week, finally, we get a little respite. 2 days between games until tomorrow, and then another 2 until Saturday's game. I got to think, I'd be a fool to pick the Magic over the Nets tomorrow night. I would think Brooklyn will come in and do what they're doing. But Harden has not been particularly good. So if you can figure out a way to limit Durant, write a book about it, you'll be a billionaire. There is no limiting Durant. But if he has an off night, then the Magic will stand a shot. But I'll say we drop it tomorrow. I'll say we get one on Saturday against Washington. That should be a fun crowd. I feel like Washington's out kicking their coverage a little bit so far this year. They have to be. Although you mentioned, Paul, the depth is really interesting. It's basically the Lakers bench from last year.
Yeah, it is.
And Bradley Beal. But no, I'm really anxious to get a look at that team. They're playing really good basketball. So I'll say 1-1 headed up to Atlanta, and Atlanta's not playing great ball right now. How about 2-1? I'm going to be the total homer and say 2-1 over the next 3 games. How about that?
Good man. We like that. We love confidence. So, mate, just one thing. With regards to Brooklyn, who would you put on Kevin Durant? Who would you think is going to be up against him?
Boy, that's a good question. Franz, Wendell. Who am I missing? It'd be nice to have a guy named Jonathan Isaac for that.
That'd be great, wouldn't it?
Yes, that would work. No, let's see what Franz has. Right, I'm gonna give him a shot. Look, Wendell. It sounds like disastrous, but Wendell was chasing. What's his face around? What's the guy's name? The shooter from San Antonio.
Doug McDermott.
Doug
McDermott.
McDermott. So look, I don't think it's probably not sustainable for a whole game, but I think everybody will be taking cracks at KD. That's for sure.
Put Mo Wagner in there. He can use the 6 fouls up in no time.
There you go. Well,
just bring Michael Carter Williams on for 2 minutes, just to get a bit of blood on the floor.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe a little Markieff Morris to his game out there.
Gary, where are you at, mate? What are you going with?
I'm going to go 2-1 as well. And
we are feeling good this week.
I am going to be the fool, and I'm going to say I think we'll beat Brooklyn.
Okay.
Nice.
And I really hope that upsets Mr. Hoopin and Luton, Elliot, if he's watching. And I also think we might nick it in Atlanta.
Yep.
So, there we are. I've seen the Nets play this season. I think they're very hit and miss. So I'm going to be a fool and go for it.
So, Mikey, where are you at, mate? What you seeing this week?
I'm also going to go 2-1 this week.
Oh, wow.
I'm going to go the percentages. I'm going to stick with Jake's prediction. I think we're going to beat the Wizards, and I think we'll beat the Hawks. If we beat the Nets, then yeah. Can you imagine beating the Jazz and the Nets back to back? That would be crazy for this young team. But yeah, I'm not quite sure that's going to happen. But the Wizards and the Hawks I think they've lost 4 in a row.
Yeah,
so,
4 in a row, mate.
They're let's keep that losing streak going for them.
4 in a row and second night of a back-to-back. It's not the easiest game for them because we'll go up there and we will give them a game. There's one thing that you know with this Magic team, they're not going to roll over. They're not just going to not compete. They are going to try. Always. They will always try. Now, Geraint has told me that he's going to go 1-2.
Oh.
I can't believe this, honestly. He's got us down as beating the Wizards, the Washington Wizards. And I'm joining the majority. I'm going 2-1 as well. And I'm going with the Wizards and Atlanta. I do genuinely believe that we can get something out of those games. It's amazing what a win does, isn't it, for confidence? We were all pessimistic last week and the week before. I
could have squeezed a 3-0 out of you guys.
But this week, no, we're for it.
Brooklyn and Washington. Washington's playing better ball than they've been playing in years. Brooklyn's coming in for crying out loud. And we're like, it's just 1-1 probably.
I did say at the start of it, we're not going to get overexcited about one win, but we all know we do. We all know we are doing. Hey, it's the nature of sports. It's
if we don't, then what fun is this, right?
Yeah, exactly,
See?
man.
Look at how excited I am. I'm knocking my microphone over.
Okay, well, that's going to wrap it up for this week. So to everybody, thank you for watching and listening. Please subscribe to the podcast and hit the notification buttons. We don't want you missing future episodes. You can find all our links on the podcast description and also via our website, orlandomagicuk.com. As always, we say, leave us the comments, interact with us. We love to hear from you and we'll always get back and we'll shoot it with you quite happily. Jake, I've just got to say thank you so much for joining us. It's been so much fun. It's been great.
Guys, thank you for everything you do. It's really cool having a network of Magic fans and broadcasters and content creators to link up with. This has been a treat, a pleasure of mine, and hope to come back soon.
Oh, You're more than welcome. And Gary, again, thank you for standing in for the Vucevic of the Valleys. We do appreciate it, mate. It's been good having you back.
I can't do anything to Cardiff Abdul-Jabbar, but yeah, just absolutely, absolute legend, Jake. Thank you. And thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
Nice one.
So to everybody, from Mikey, Gary, Jake and myself, until next time, go Magic.